Welcome back. Now for the news in detail. We start from the United States, which has proposed sanctions against Turkey for its military action against Kurdish fighters in northeastern Syria. Republican Senator Lindsey Graham and Democratic Senator Chris Van Hollen introduced the planned curbs. The proposed embargoes target U.S. assets held by Turkey. They also suggest imposing visa restriction on Turkey's leadership, including President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Senator Graham criticized the White House for refusing to act against Turkey. But Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. did not encourage Turkey to launch the attack.
Yeah, well, that's just false. The United States didn't give Turkey a green light. We'll continue to be in a position to do what we need to do to keep the American people as safe as we possibly can.
Well, Senator Graham says it is not yet clear if the proposed sanctions will have enough support to be passed by both Congress and the U.S. Senate. Now, moving on, an urgent closed-door meeting of the UN Security Council has been called today over Turkey's military action in northeast Syria. The UK, France and Germany requested the meeting after Turkey launched its military offensive. The international community has expressed concern at Ankara's actions. European capitals have criticized the Turkish offensive against Kurdish forces, warning the move could lead to an ISIS resurgence. Italian Prime Minister Giuseppe Conte says the operation risks destabilizing the region and harming civilians. The Arab League has also called an emergency meeting for Saturday over the development. In a statement, Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry said the operation is a threat to regional security. The UAE has called the offensive unacceptable aggression against the sovereignty of an Arab state. Azad Kashmir's President Sardar Masood Khan says the UN Security Council should have saved the people of occupied Kashmir from Indian atrocities as the curfew and communications blackout enters its 67th day. The president said he is disappointed by what he called a muted response from the United Nations Security Council on the Kashmir dispute. Speaking at a conference in Islamabad, Khan said China, Turkey, Malaysia and Iran have openly condemned Indian oppression in Kashmir. In his address, Pakistan State Minister for Parliamentary Affairs Ali Muhammad Khan said Indian oppression has internationalized the Kashmir dispute. He said Prime Minister Imran Khan is highlighting the Kashmir issue at all international forums, and China has assured Pakistan of its support in resolving the dispute. Meanwhile, condemning New Delhi's illegal annexation of occupied Kashmir, 132 students and teachers have written to the Indian government. In a letter to Prime Minister Modi, they protested against India's human rights violations in the valley. The letter read, 8 million people of the valley have been under lockdown for more than 2 months now. Mentioning the communications blackout, they said such a move is simply unacceptable and an ominous sign for India. The letter also makes the case against detentions, shortage of food and health facilities, and violent attacks on students in the valley. The India-imposed clampdown and communications blackout has now entered its 67th day. Twitter says it will no longer unilaterally suspend or terminate verified accounts of Pakistani users. National Information Technology Board CEO Shabahat Ali Shah says the microblogging site made an agreement with Islamabad. In a tweet, he said the deal was reached after Islamabad shared its concerns over unreasonable suspensions. Shah said an understanding was developed following a conference call with the company's policy officials in the UAE. Over 300 accounts have been suspended for tweeting in support of occupied Kashmir since August 5th. In a ceasefire violation along the line of control, a Pakistani soldier has been martyred in unprovoked firing by the Indian forces. Pakistan's military says 2 women have also been wounded by the cross-border gunfire at Baro and Chirikot sectors. In a statement, the military's media wing, Inter-Services Public Relations, said troops targeted Indian Army posts in response. It also said there are reports of Indian military casualties after Islamabad's strong response across the border. The tensions between Pakistan and India have escalated after New Delhi illegally annexed and occupied Kashmir on August 5. Now, President Donald Trump says the U.S. military becoming involved in Middle East was the worst decision ever made. In a series of tweets, Trump said the U.S. went to a war under a false premise of weapons of mass destruction. He was referring to the U.S. invasion of Iraq in 2003. The president said he was ensuring safe return of U.S. troops from the Middle East. The U.S. has between 60,000 and 80,000 troops across the region, which includes Afghanistan, Iraq and Syria. Tunisia's Ennahda party has won the country's parliamentary elections. The Election Commission says the party took lead with 52 deputies. The 217-seat chamber is now likely to have a fractured coalition government. Ennahda will be the largest party in Tunisia's new parliament, but it may struggle to build a governing coalition with just 52 seats. The Heart of Tunisia party came in second with 38 members, followed by the Democratic Current Party with 22. This is the second parliamentary election since the Tunis revolution of 2011. Now moving on, the EU's Brexit negotiator Michel Barnier says the bloc cannot accept the latest proposals from London. Speaking in the European Parliament, Barnier said a Brexit deal ahead of October 31st will be very difficult. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker said he would not exclude a deal. He called for the blame game over Brexit to come to an end. European Parliament head David Sassoli said EU lawmakers are ready to accept a Brexit delay, but the request should come from London. Moving on, Germany says Ukraine's acceptance of the Saint-Mayer formula is enough to go ahead with the Normandy format summit. Chancellor Angela Merkel was discussing the coming meeting in a phone call with Ukrainian President Zelensky. The German cabinet's official spokesman Stefan Seibert says both leaders agreed the requirements for the meeting were met on October 1st. Seibert said Merkel and Zelensky believe Russians' gas should be delivered to Europe through Ukraine as soon as possible. The Normandy 4 group, comprising Russia, Germany, France and Ukraine, is pushing to meet this month, but Russia has put forward more preconditions for talks after Kiev agreed to its proposed solution for the Donbass region. In Ecuador, President Lenin Moreno has ordered a curfew around government buildings after clashes between protesters and police left 62 people dead. They were protesting against rising fuel prices now. Almost 680 people have been arrested since the anti-austerity protests began last week when President Lenin Moreno cut fuel subsidies. But the government has failed to quell the unrest. The Moreno has accused ex-president Rafael Correa of wanting a coup with the help of Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro. 3 scientists have won the 2019 Nobel Prize for Chemistry for developing rechargeable lithium-ion batteries. 97-year-old American John Goodenough became the oldest winner of a Nobel Prize. He shares nearly $1 million award with Britain's Stanley Whittingham and Japan's Akira Yoshino. The Nobel Committee said lithium-ion batteries have revolutionized human lives since they entered the market in 1991, after they laid the foundation of a wireless, fossil fuel-free society. Whittingham developed the first functional lithium battery in the early 1970s. Goodenough doubled the battery's potential in the following decade, and Yoshino eliminated pure lithium from the battery, making it much safer to use. Meanwhile, the dengue outbreak in South Asia has claimed scores of lives this year. The World Health Organization estimates there are about 390 million infections every year. But heavy rains are only making the situation worse. In Bangladesh, 160 people have died since January, whereas the total number of patients stands at almost 14,000. In Pakistan, 40 people have died and over 10,000 dengue cases registered this year. India has more than 1,100 reported cases, with the death toll put at 56. Authorities say torrential monsoon rains have increased the number of cases. They say the inefficiency of governments in controlling flooding makes matters worse. Countries such as Vietnam, the Philippines and Malaysia have also been hit by dengue outbreaks in recent months. It's time for a short break. Stay tuned with Indus News. Welcome back. Now moving on with the news stories. Now, in Australia, up to 30 homes have been destroyed by bushfires, which intensified in parts of the country on Tuesday. Wildfires have been wreaking havoc in New South Wales over the past few weeks. On Tuesday, fires forced residents of several Queensland towns to evacuate. There are currently close to 40 bushfires raging across New South Wales and Queensland. Drought-affected parts of eastern Australia have endured intense fires since September, which the authorities have described as the worst start to the fire season. The authorities say bushfires are presently affecting over 100,000 hectares of land. The 5th China helicopter exposition has just opened in Tianjin. The event offers rotorcraft industry professionals the chance to show their skills. The Aviation Industry Corporation of China says the 4-day event will run from October 10th to 13th. The show offers a business-to-business platform with static and dynamic demonstrations as well as conferences. The expo is expected to attract aviation professionals from China and around the world. In France, climate change campaigners have filmed a bird's eye view of the Chamonix Alps in the hope that it might help combat climate change apathy. This report will show you breathtaking footage of once mighty glaciers, revealing the damage inflicted by global warming.
This is how Victor, a 9-year-old white-tailed eagle, sees the world as he flies over the Alps. A camera mounted between Victor's wings captures the stunningly beautiful images of the Alps' once magnificent glaciers. The mountain range covers a number of European countries and has been affected in recent decades by climate change. The images were provided by a charity working group called the Eagle's Wings Foundation.
Around the world, we have over the last 50 years had an increase of temperature of around 0.8 degrees. In the Alps, an average of 1.5 degree. And here we're in the Mont Blanc, it's 2 degrees. So this is already like the worst projection that actually scientists gave for climate change in the next century.
The bird and its handlers are preparing to fly over 5 glaciers in 5 European countries in 5 days to raise awareness of global warming.
Unfortunately, today glaciers are the main problem. We can see clearly that they're melting at incredible speed. So how can we reintroduce these eagles to an environment that is not suitable for them? We need to protect the environment first, then we can bring the eagles back into the wild.
Residents say the mountain range has dramatically changed during the last decade. Many wonder whether their children will have the opportunity to see the same mountaintops.
In business news, stock markets in China and Japan have rebounded on reports that the US could announce concessions for telecom giant Huawei. Gains precede high-power trade talks between the US and China today. The Shanghai Composite is up more than 0.5%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng has also gained fractionally. Asia's richest index, the Nikkei 225 in Tokyo, is also up nearly 0.5%. International oil prices have continued this week's decline, with Brent futures selling for a tad over $58 in Asian trading. Now it's time for the weather update. With the weather update, we come to the end of this bulletin. For more news and updates, keep watching Indus News.